It's only natural for any game series to change over time, but just because something added to a formula is new, doesn't necessarily mean it'll sit right with longtime fans of the series. And I don't think anybody knows that better than Paper Mario fans.
As early as the third entry in the series, each game has been wildly different from the last in ways that many core fans would argue is not for the best. It seems like with every new Paper Mario game, the discontentment and frustration of the community grows significantly, and the discourse surrounding the series reaches unimaginable highs. But to me, it feels like those days are nearly behind us.
Hey, what's up, it's your boy Rock. Today, I'd like to tell you the story of how the remaster of Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door has instilled an excitement and optimism for the series within me that I have never quite felt before. Paper Mario has become a painful series to discuss online, regardless of any nuance or individuality you may present as to why you do or don't like certain games in the series. You're always categorized as either a modern Paper Mario fan or a Thousand Year Door fan, and each side of this discussion are at each other's throats constantly. Civil discussion does not exist with this series, and hasn't existed in what feels like forever. But why exactly is that? Well, I think many people would argue that the discourse surrounding the Paper Mario series began to turn sour around 2012, with the release of Paper Mario Sticker Star. This game was divisive, to put it lightly. And I think it's fair to say that this was where the wedge began to form in the Paper Mario fandom. Looking at it objectively, trying to keep my feelings at bay here, I don't want to start any arguments. Sticker Star was a very different game than what fans had come to expect of the series. The main way in which this is the case is in its lack of real story, something that the previous games prided themselves on. Interesting and engaging plots were the lifeblood of this series, but Sticker Star chose to dial back that aspect of the games to near enough nothing in exchange for a focus on paper. Of course, the extremely unique RPG gameplay is also an incredibly important part of the first two games, something which Sticker Star actually captured better than the third game, Super Paper Mario. But what Super Paper Mario will always have over Sticker Star is that the gameplay is, well, to enter feelings territory for just a sec, fun, enjoyable. It offers anything of substance. As someone studying game development, I have a solid argument as to why Paper Mario Sticker Star, and to a lesser extent the two games that follow it, are objectively bad, with poor design decisions aplenty. And this is where the big divide in this fandom starts to rear its ugly head. Most people think Sticker Star is not a very good Paper Mario game. We largely can agree on this. But with the two games that follow, it's not so cut and dry. Paper Mario Color Splash came out for the Wii U a few years after Sticker Star, and was, for all intents and purposes, a sequel to that game. Despite the massive uproar from fans and critics alike, Nintendo decided to double down on what they had with Sticker Star, and what they were met with was much of the same backlash. Paper Mario Color Splash is a massive improvement over Sticker Star, but it very much has the same DNA, and that's what many fans of the series took issue with. But you know what? Because it was better, a lot of fans also found themselves quite enjoying it. Sure, it wasn't quite what they were looking for in a new Paper Mario game, but it did the job. It was funny, had at the very least a better story, and the gameplay was less annoying? Although that really depends on who you ask. The ratio of haters to fans of Color Splash was a lot less drastic than it was with Sticker Star. And while I think fans who were outspokenly disappointed with this game were absolutely entitled to feel that way, many people began to see their criticisms as petty. The discourse surrounding the series was becoming less about Nintendo making poor decisions with their games, and more about Paper Mario fans not being able to let go of the past. So when 2020 rolled around and Nintendo released another Paper Mario game that was in essence another sequel to Sticker Star, how do you think the discussion surrounding that game and the series at large panned out? Were people having a calm, rational discussion about why they disliked or liked certain aspects of the game, both on their own and in comparison to the previous heights of the series? Nope! Not at all! Discussions surrounding Paper Mario the Origami King. Well, they weren't even discussions. The fandom had derailed into an unrelenting flame war. Because in truth, the Origami King is probably the closest we'd gotten in almost 2 decades to the traditional Paper Mario experience we had been waiting for. A lot of people were enjoying that game, and that just made the ones who didn't seem that much more entitled and naggy to the masses. The people criticizing this game were not just seen as people who played a thing and didn't like the thing that they played. They were seen as whiny old 1000-year door fans who won't shut up until they've gotten exactly what they want. It was exhausting. And that's the thing. If you'll want to prefer the original trilogy over the modern trilogy, you aren't labelled a classic Paper Mario fan, you're labelled a 1000-year door fan. That is how important this game is to the series. It stands in such stark contrast to the modern entries. To like this game is to stand in defiant contrast to everything the modern games represent. That is how big a deal Paper Mario the 1000-Year Door is to fans. Whether they wanted to admit it or not, Nintendo knew that every new Paper Mario game they released was being compared to the 1000-Year Door, because that game is simply a masterpiece. It is not without its issues, a thing that modern Paper Mario fans refuse to believe that we 1000-Year Door fans actually understand. It is not a perfect game, but it offers so much more than any of the modern games do. It's unique down to its very core. It's darker and weirder than most Nintendo games, honestly. It's funny and witty, with expertly written characters who feel real. The world this game is set in feels real, and the gameplay that ties the whole experience together is nothing short of sublime. Paper Mario the 1000-Year Door perfectly represents to me, and I'm sure many others, exactly what a Paper Mario game should strive to be. You want to know why every new Paper Mario game gets compared to the 1000-Year Door? It's because it's that damn good. But the thing with Nintendo is that they can be pretty insecure sometimes, or at least that's how they can come off. Their actions often communicate to us that they don't want us to play older games in a particular series because they're scared that we'll think that those games are better than what they're currently offering. And we see this time and time again. We kept saying how the new Paper Mario games just are not as good as the 1000-Year Door. But because Nintendo is Nintendo, we felt like we had to accept that they'd continue to ignore that game's existence, keep doubling down on what we were telling them was not working, because they couldn't possibly change course now. We all but lost hope that Paper Mario could be a series that we loved anymore. After being burned so many times, after Nintendo was repeatedly, clearly communicating to us that the Paper Mario we wanted was nothing more than a distant memory, how could we have faith that we could enjoy a new Paper Mario game? This was the moment that everything changed. This was not just a simple announcement for an old game coming to the Switch. This was a message. Nintendo was telling us that they heard us. They understood us. With this announcement, they communicated all at once that they can see the issues we have with the modern games. They can see just how much the Thousand Year Door means to us, and how desperately we wish the series would go back to what was working so well, and that they're taking the first step in that direction. Because my friends, this was so much more than just an announcement for a Thousand Year Door remake. This was a signal, clear as can be, that Paper Mario is changing. Because, let's face it, Nintendo didn't have to do this. Sticker Star, Color Splash, and the Origami King are games that have been criticized to hell and back. And yet, all but Color Splash outsold the Thousand Year Door by a considerable amount. If Nintendo truly were to be acting purely from a business standpoint, why would they stop taking the series in the direction it was headed? People can talk shit on these new Paper Mario games until the cows come home. But at the end of the day, those games are making money. As much as we may hate to admit it, we fans of the classic style of games, we're in the minority here. Paper Mario games release in 4-year intervals, more or less. So 2024's Paper Mario slot could have easily been taken up by yet another new game in the modern style. Or if they were dead set on a remake, Sticker Star was right there. 3DS games coming to Switch is not a new or novel concept. If Nintendo was so adamant that the series would never go back to what we wanted it to be, they could have retooled Sticker Star for the Switch in a very similar fashion to the Luigi's Mansion 2 remaster. But they didn't do that. Wii U ports have been one of the single most consistent schedule fillers in the Switch's entire life. They could have, at any point, removed the touchscreen features from Color Splash and slapped it onto the Switch to sit right beside the Origami King. But they didn't. Super Paper Mario is a game that almost sits outside of the two categories the games in the series are lumped into. It is so different from any of the modern trilogy and either of the original two games that in some ways, a re-release of that game could have been the safest move for Nintendo to make, especially considering that it's the single best-selling game in the series. But they didn't do that. Nintendo chose to have their next Paper Mario release be a remake of a classic Paper Mario game. But not just any classic Paper Mario game. They chose to remake the Thousand Year Door. The one that every new game in the series is compared to relentlessly. The one that is asked about in every single interview with the series producer. The one that had an entire social media movement backed by thousands of fans that campaigned for a remake. Nintendo chose to do exactly what we asked them to do. They heard our cries. They saw the outpouring of love and fondness that so many of us hold for the Thousand Year Door, and they chose to give us exactly what we wanted. They did not do this begrudgingly. They didn't look at our outcry and think, Jesus, let's just give them the game so they can finally shut up. No, no, no. They did this because they wanted to give us what we wanted. For whatever reason, their mindset regarding this series is finally beginning to shift. They're finally starting to see that the way the series was, it was something special. It was something to be celebrated. They chose to re-release the Thousand Year Door, but they were not content with stopping there. They chose to remake the game from the ground up. They chose to keep absolutely every minuscule detail intact, every character, every quirk of a location's design, every gameplay element and story snippet. It's all here. And they chose to make this their final announcement in the final direct they held in 2023. They announced this remake in the same slot that we've historically seen reserved for Smash Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, mainline Mario, because that is how important the Thousand Year Door is to us and to this series. And Nintendo finally understands that. I have never been so confident about the future of any Nintendo series. Everything that they're doing is communicating that this is the dawn of a new era for the Paper Mario series. This series is finally getting back on track, back to what we've longed for it to be for so incredibly long now. Its future is looking brighter than ever. And Nintendo wanted us to know it. And that is enough for me. This remake and everything it stands for has given me so much hope for the future of what is one of my most treasured series. It finally feels like we can put its darkest days behind us once and for all.
Unless, of course, I were to indulge in those darkest days just one last time, to see if I can find some light in them before I bid them a final farewell.
What have I done?